The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void between 3 stars, a marvel of engineering that housed the representatives of 47 species. Today, the atmosphere was tense. Ambassador Krell of the Vornathi Empire rose from his seat, his crystalline body refracting the light into rainbow patterns across the walls. "The humans are gone," he announced, his voice echoing through the translation fields. Every colony, every outpost, every ship vanished without a trace. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The humans had been members of the Council for barely 2 centuries, a young species still learning the ways of galactic civilization. They were unremarkable in most ways: average technology, modest military, no particular genetic advantages. They were traders, diplomats, explorers. Harmless. Ambassador Thera of the Selenite Collective leaned forward, her 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "When did this happen?" "3 months ago," Krell replied. "We didn't notice immediately. Their colonies simply went dark. No distress signals, no requests for aid. When we sent investigation teams, we found empty cities. Ships floating dead in space. But no bodies. No signs of struggle. Just absence." High Chancellor Vorgrim, a massive reptilian from the dominant Crothan Empire, growled from his elevated throne. "This is concerning, but hardly catastrophic. Humanity controlled only 14 systems. Their disappearance creates opportunities for expansion and resource allocation." "That's what worries me," said Ambassador Lorix of the Fantine Confederacy, his feathers rustling nervously. Humanity was growing fast. Their adaptability was remarkable. In 2 centuries, they spread across 14 systems when it took us 1,000 years to do the same. Vorgrim snorted, smoke curling from his nostrils. Adaptability means nothing without power. They had neither military strength nor economic dominance. They were insects buzzing around giants. Krell's crystalline form pulsed with an uneasy light. "Nevertheless, I propose we investigate thoroughly. Something capable of removing an entire species without trace is something we should understand." The council debated for hours. Eventually, they agreed to form an investigation committee, but allocated minimal resources. After all, humanity was gone. What threat could they pose now? The committee's report came 3 weeks later. It was brief and unhelpful. Human space was indeed empty. Technology was left behind, sometimes still operational. Food was found half-eaten on tables. Ships were adrift with engines cold but functional. It was as if every human had simply chosen to disappear at the same moment. "Mass religious event?" suggested one investigator. "Technological ascension?" proposed another. "Perhaps they found something that frightened them enough to flee," offered a third. The theories multiplied, but evidence remained scarce. Eventually, the galaxy moved on. Human space was divided among neighboring powers. The Vornathi claimed the resource-rich systems. The Crothan Empire absorbed the strategic positions. Smaller species fought over the scraps. 6 months after humanity's disappearance, Ambassador Krell stood in what had been New Chicago, a human colony on the planet they called Haven's Rest. The city was pristine, frozen in time. Coffee shops still had drinks on counters. Libraries had books open on reading tables. A child's toy lay abandoned in a park, slowly gathering alien dust. Krell picked up the toy, a simple stuffed animal, worn from love. Something about it disturbed him deeply. Humans were sentimental creatures. They treasured such objects. Why would they leave them behind? His communicator buzzed. "Ambassador, you need to return to Council space immediately." "What's happened?" "The Zelkran hegemony. Their entire border fleet just vanished. 47 capital ships, gone in an instant, just like the humans." Krell's crystalline body went dark with dread. The Zelkran were not humans. They were an ancient power, militaristic and strong, controlling over 200 systems. If something could make them disappear, "I'm on my way," he said, dropping the toy. As his ship lifted off from the dead human city, Krell looked back at the empty streets below. For the first time, he wondered if humanity hadn't vanished because they were weak. Perhaps they'd vanished because they were preparing. and perhaps the galaxy should have paid more attention when they had the chance. The stars seemed colder now, more distant. In the depths of space, something was watching. Something was moving. And the Galactic Council, in all its ancient wisdom and power, had no idea what was coming. The age of humanity was not over. It was only just beginning. High Chancellor Vorgrim crushed the datapad in his massive clawed hand. Around him, the Crothan Imperial War Council stood in rigid attention, their scaled faces betraying no emotion despite the terror they all felt. 12 fleets, Vorgrim snarled. In 3 months, 12 fleets have disappeared. The Zelkrin, the Manthari, the Prexians. Species that have existed for millennia, vanishing like morning mist. General Thax, his second-in-command, stepped forward. The pattern is consistent, Chancellor. Each disappearance occurs at the edge of what was once human space. Whatever is doing this is working from the outside in, systematically removing military assets. Pirates, Vorgrim demanded, though he knew the answer was absurd. No pirates could coordinate attacks across this distance, nor possess technology to remove entire fleets without a single distress call being transmitted. Ambassador Krell materialized on the holographic platform, his crystalline form transmitted from the Vornathi homeworld. Chancellor, the Council requests your presence. We've discovered something. 30 hours later, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened. Every seat was filled. Species that had feuded for generations sat side by side, united by fear. Krell activated the central display. We recovered this from a probe that was investigating the Zelkrin disappearance. It managed to transmit before it was destroyed. The image showed a Zelkrin battleship, one of the most powerful vessels in known space. Its weapons were charging shields at maximum. Then, without warning, the space around it simply opened. Not a portal, not a wormhole, but space itself folding back like a curtain. From that impossible darkness emerged shapes. Ships, but unlike any the galaxy had seen. They were smooth, almost organic, with geometries that hurt to look at. Their hulls were black as void, absorbing all light, and they moved with a precision that defied physics. The Zelkrin ship fired every weapon. Plasma cannons that could boil oceans, missiles that could crack planets, energy beams that could cut through stars. All of it struck the dark ships. Nothing happened. The weapons simply ceased to exist upon contact, absorbed or negated by technology beyond understanding. Then the dark ships fired back. But not at the Zelkrin vessel. They fired at space itself, and reality tore like paper. The Zelkrin ship was pulled into that tear, crumpling like a discarded wrapper, and then the tear sealed. Total time, 3 seconds. The council chamber was silent. What kind of weapon can tear reality? Whispered Ambassador Lorix. A weapon built by a species that's had centuries to prepare, Krell said quietly. I've analyzed the design of those ships, the mathematical patterns, the engineering principles. They're extrapolations of human technology. Impossible, Vorgrim roared. Humans were barely capable of fusion drives. They were children playing with fire. Were they? Krell projected another image. I've been reviewing old records. Human scientific advancement was exponential, not linear. In 2 centuries, they went from barely escaping their gravity well to colonizing 14 systems. We assumed they'd reached their plateau. What if they didn't? A new voice spoke from the gallery. It was High Scholar Nexus, a being of pure energy from the Luminate Ascendancy, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. The Luminates have observed humanity since their first radio transmissions. We saw in them a peculiar trait. They never stopped questioning, never stopped improving. Every solution created new questions. Every answer demanded deeper understanding. That's not unique, Vorgrim protested. All species seek knowledge. No, Nexus corrected. Most species seek sufficient knowledge. Humans sought perfect knowledge. They were never satisfied. It was beautiful and terrifying. Krell continued, I believe humanity didn't disappear because they were destroyed or afraid. They disappeared because they finished preparing. For what, I don't know. But these attacks on military assets suggest they're removing the galaxy's ability to resist. Resist what? Demanded Thera. If humans want conquest, why not announce themselves? Why the mystery? Because they learned from us? Krell said grimly. We taught them that the strong dominate the weak, that military might determines survival. They were surrounded by empires that had existed for thousands of years, empires that saw them as children. Perhaps they decided to never be vulnerable again. Vorgrim slammed his fist on his throne. Then we unite the fleet. Every species, every ship, every weapon. We find these ghosts and we crush them. With what? Krell asked. They can tear reality. They can make entire fleets vanish. What do we have that could possibly compete? The question hung in the air, unanswered. High Scholar Nexus spoke again. There is something you should know. Before humanity vanished, their research focused heavily on quantum mechanics, dimensional theory, and something they called vacuum energy manipulation. We Luminates dismissed it as theoretical fantasy. But if they succeeded, then they're not just hiding in normal space, Krell finished. They're hiding in spaces we can't even perceive. A junior ambassador from the Karathi species stood nervously. What do they want? If they have this power, why haven't they simply destroyed us? Krell looked at the frozen image of the dark ship on the display. In its smooth, terrible beauty, he saw something that chilled his crystalline core. I don't think they want to destroy us, he said slowly. I think they want us to understand something first. Understand what? That we're only alive because they allow it. The attack stopped. For 6 weeks, not a single ship disappeared. Not a single fleet went dark. The galaxy held its breath, waiting. The Galactic Council had assembled the largest military force in recorded history. 17,000 capital ships, 400,000 support vessels, representing every major power and most minor ones. They called it the Unity Armada. Admiral Kreneth of the Krothan Empire commanded from the flagship Eternal Dominion, a super dreadnought 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could sterilize continents. Around him, holographic displays showed the vast fleet arranged in defensive formations across 100 light-years of space. Status? He barked. All ships reporting ready, Admiral, his tactical officer replied. Detection grids online. Every scanning frequency active. Probability engines calculating threat vectors. If anything enters normal space within our perimeter, we'll know instantly. Kreneth nodded, though doubt gnawed at him. How do you fight an enemy that can tear holes in reality? Ambassador Krell stood on the observation deck, looking out at the assembled might of galactic civilization. Beside him, High Scholar Nexus hovered, his energy form pulsing with agitation. This is foolish, Nexus said. We're children waving sticks at a storm. What choice do we have? Krell asked. Surrender without even seeing the enemy? Understanding is not surrender. Before Krell could respond, every display in the fleet simultaneously went dark. Emergency power kicked in, but the holographics didn't return. Instead, every screen, every window, every reflective surface began showing the same image. A human. She was young, perhaps 30 in human years, with dark skin and eyes that held ancient weariness. She wore a simple black uniform with no insignia. Behind her, barely visible in the darkness, loomed shapes that hurt to perceive, the dark ships. People of the galaxy, she said in perfect universal standard. My name is Commander Sarah Chan of the Terran Dominion. We apologize for the alarm we've caused. It was necessary. Admiral Kreneth found his voice. You attack our fleets and call it necessary? Show yourself. Face us in honest combat. Sarah's expression didn't change. Combat? Admiral, you're already dead. Your entire fleet is dead. You have been for the past 3 minutes. Impossible. Our shields are. The view changed. Now it showed the Unity Armada from outside. But the ships were frozen, not moving. Timestamps showed no progression. We've placed your fleet in a temporal bubble, Sarah explained calmly. From our perspective, 3 minutes have passed. From yours, no time at all. We could keep you there for 1,000 years if we wished. Or we could collapse the bubble and turn those 3 minutes into 3 seconds of compressed time. Your ships would age to dust instantly. Horror swept through the fleet as they realized they couldn't move, couldn't fight, couldn't even confirm if they were truly experiencing real time. Why? Krell demanded. Why do this? What do you want? Sarah's eyes fixed on the camera, and for the first time emotion showed sadness. 200 years ago, humans entered galactic society with hope. We dreamed of cooperation, of learning, of friendship among the stars. Do you remember what we found instead? She gestured, and the display changed again. Archives played. Humans being denied critical technology for their own good. Human colonies taxed at rates 3 times higher than others. Human diplomats laughed at in council chambers. The Crothan Empire declaring human space strategically necessary and demanding tribute. The Vornathi Confederacy strip mining a human agricultural world because lesser species must yield to greater needs. We were beaten down at every turn, Sarah continued, not through overt war, but through systemic contempt. You saw us as children, as primitives, as useful but ultimately disposable. So we learned, we adapted, and we left. Where did you go? Nexus asked. Into spaces between spaces, into dimensions you've never imagined. We found that reality is far more flexible than your physics suggests. While you argued in your council chambers, we rebuilt ourselves from the atoms up. We shed our limitations. We became something more. Vorgrim's voice came through the communication network. And now you return for revenge? To conquer? Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. Conquer? Chancellor, you still don't understand. We don't want your worlds. We don't want your resources. We don't even want your submission. Then what? Krell asked. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes intense. We want you to feel what we felt. The helplessness. The realization that you're only alive because a greater power permits it. We want you to understand that your empires, your ancient civilizations, your proud histories, all of it exists at our sufferance. She paused, letting that sink in. The fleets we removed aren't destroyed. They're in temporal suspension like you are now. We're keeping them as insurance. Any aggression against what remains of humanity will result in their permanent deletion from time itself. What remains? Thera asked. Are there still humans in normal space? A few colonies, observers, witnesses. They're under our protection now. Sarah's expression hardened. The galaxy will leave them alone. You will grant them full sovereignty over their original 14 systems. You will forgive all debts and tributes demanded of them. And you will formally apologize for 2 centuries of systematic marginalization. And if we refuse? Vorgrim challenged. Then we start deleting species, Sarah said flatly. Not just ships, entire species. We'll pull your homeworlds into temporal loops and watch you live your last day over and over until your stars burn out. We can do this, Chancellor. Your science is 10,000 years behind ours now. The fleet was silent. The terrible truth settled over them like a burial shroud. Krell spoke carefully. You said you don't want conquest. What do you want? For the first time, Sarah smiled, and it was genuinely sad. We want to be left alone. We want the galaxy to evolve past the might makes right philosophy that almost crushed us. We want future species to not suffer what we did. But if we have to rule through fear to achieve peace, we will. The transmission ended. Normal time resumed instantly. The Unity Armada found they could move again, but every commander knew the truth now. They'd been in the enemy's palm the entire time, and the humans had simply chosen not to close their fist. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. 3 days had passed since Commander Chen's ultimatum. The Unity Armada remained assembled but powerless, a monument to obsolete might. Representatives from every species sat in stunned silence, facing a truth they'd never imagined. They were no longer the dominant powers of the galaxy. Ambassador Krell stood at the central podium. His crystalline form, usually bright and refractive, was dim with exhaustion. The human terms are before us. Full sovereignty for their systems, complete trade rights, forgiveness of all debts, a formal apology from the Council, and most significantly, A complete restructuring of the Council Charter to prevent any species from being systematically marginalized. Accepting these terms is surrender, growled Vorgrim, though his voice lacked its usual force. It sets precedent that threatening violence achieves political goals. They didn't threaten, Nexus observed from his energy field. They demonstrated. There's a difference. We threatened humanity for 2 centuries with economic and military pressure. They simply proved they're beyond our ability to resist. Ambassador Lorix's feathers rustled nervously. We must consider the philosophical implications. If one species can advance this far in mere centuries, what does this say about our own civilizations? We've been stagnant for millennia. Stagnant? Vorgrim roared, finding his anger again. The Crothan Empire has maintained order for 10,000 years. We've prevented wars, established trade routes, created peace. Peace through dominance, Krell said quietly. Peace through threat. Humans offered us cooperation, and we gave them conditions. Perhaps that's what drove them to transcend us. Thera spoke, her 6 eyes blinking in a pattern that indicated deep concern. We're debating politics while ignoring the larger question. What are humans now? Commander Chun called her organization the Terran Dominion, not the Human Federation or any democratic designation. What if they've changed so fundamentally that they're no longer the species we knew? Before anyone could respond, the lights dimmed. Not a technological failure, something else. Reality itself seemed to contract, and then she was there. Commander Chun stood in the center of the council chamber, physically present despite no ship having approached the station. She simply appeared. How? Vorgrim began. Quantum tunneling on a macro scale, Chun explained. One of the simpler applications of our technology. I'm here to answer your questions directly. You've had 3 days. What do you want to know? Krell stepped forward. Are you still human? Biologically, Chun considered the question. Mostly. We've enhanced ourselves, extended lifespans, increased cognitive processing, resistance to environmental extremes. But we still feel love, fear, hope. We're not machines, if that's your concern. We're just better versions of what we were. And your numbers? Asked Thera. Commander Chun, forgive my bluntness, but your species had only 18 billion individuals when you vanished. How many of you are there now? About the same. We're not breeding an empire. Quality over quantity. Each of us is worth, she paused, doing mental calculation, approximately 10,000 of your best soldiers in terms of combat capability. But we don't want soldiers. We want scientists, artists, philosophers. We want to explore what's possible when a species stops fighting itself and focuses on growth. Vorgrim stood, his massive form towering even in the holographic display. You speak of growth while holding knives to our throats. You've made us prisoners in our own space. No, Chun corrected. We've made you aware that you were never alone at the top. The knife was always there, Chancellor. We're just the first to pick it up and show it to you. Why not destroy us? Asked a minor ambassador from the Quellan cluster. If you have this power, why negotiate at all? Chun turned to face the speaker, and her expression softened. Because that's not who we are. Humanity was beaten down, yes. We were marginalized and exploited. But we never became monsters. We learned from your mistakes without becoming you. She actually walked, not floated, to stand before Vorgrim's throne. Chancellor, your empire has existed for 10 millennia. In that time, how many species have you elevated to council status? How many have you helped reach their potential? Vorgrim's silence was answer enough. You maintain order, Chun continued, but you don't foster growth. You keep everyone at a level you can manage. That's not peace, that's stagnation. Nexus pulsed brighter. Commander, the Luminates have a question. We've existed in our energy state for over 50,000 years. In all that time, we've never seen a species advance as you have. What made humanity different? Chin smiled. Desperation. Evolution favors the pressured. We were surrounded by powers that could crush us, so we had 2 choices. Accept our place at the bottom or transcend the entire system. We chose transcendence. And now, Krell asked, what are your intentions long-term? We're leaving. The simple statement shocked the chamber. Not from this dimension entirely, but we're moving to higher-order spaces where physical matter is more optional. We'll maintain observational posts in normal space, and we'll intervene if we see another young species being crushed like we were. Think of us as evolutionary pressure. We'll ensure the galaxy continues to advance, not stagnate. You're appointing yourselves gods? Vorgrim spat. We're appointing ourselves guardians, Chun corrected. The galaxy needs a counterweight to ancient empires that see new species as threats or resources. You had your chance to be mentors. You chose to be exploiters. So now we'll do the job you refused. She turned to address the entire council. Here's what will happen. You'll accept our terms, not because we're forcing you, but because they're reasonable. Human colonies will be autonomous. You'll revise your council charter to include protections for emerging species. And most importantly, you'll begin investing in advancement, not maintenance. And if we refuse? Asked Ambassador Terex of the Dalvern Combine. Chen's eyes went cold. Then we'll release the temporal locks on your homeworld stars. We've had them in suspension fields for the past week. Without our intervention, 3 species represented here will watch their stars collapse into neutron stars within the hour. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species representatives scrambled to confirm Chen's claim. Within moments, the horrified confirmations came back. Human devices were indeed attached to stellar cores across the galaxy. Devices no one had detected until now. That's terrorism, someone shouted. That's insurance, Chen replied calmly. We're not going to use them. But you need to understand, deeply, truly understand, that your survival is no longer guaranteed by your military might or ancient legacies. It's contingent on your cooperation. She walked back to the center of the chamber. We don't want slaves. We don't want subjects. We want partners. But partnership requires mutual respect, and respect requires understanding that no one species is inherently superior. Krell spoke into the stunned silence. The Vornathi accept your terms. All of them. The Crothan Empire accepts. Chin nodded. Good. The temporal locks will remain for 1 more year as a probationary period. Prove you can follow through and they'll be removed. Fail and, well, you understand the consequences. She began to fade, quantum tunneling preparing to return her to wherever humanity now called home. But before she vanished completely, Krell called out. Commander, one last question. Why save us at all? You could have let your technology advantages remain secret, quietly built your power, and then simply replaced us. Why reveal yourselves? Chen's fading form paused. Because we remember what it felt like to be powerless. And because even at our lowest point, we still believed the galaxy could be better. We're giving you the chance to prove us right. Then she was gone. The council sat in silence, processing what had just occurred. The age of ancient empires was over. A new age had begun. And humanity, the species they dismissed as primitive children, had become the galaxy's unexpected shepherd. One by one, other species added their assent. Some enthusiastically, others grudgingly, but all understanding they had no real choice. When it came to Vorgrim, the ancient chancellor stood slowly. For a moment, his reptilian face showed true emotion. Not anger, but sadness. The galaxy transformed in ways no one anticipated. The year following humanity's ultimatum, later called the Year of Shadows, saw changes that millennia of diplomacy had failed to achieve. On the Crothan homeworld of Crothes Prime, Chancellor Vorgrim stood before the Imperial Assembly, formally dissolving the tributary system that had funded his empire for 10,000 years. Smaller species, previously forced to pay crushing taxes, watched in disbelief as their debts were forgiven. We were wrong, Vorgrim announced, the words like acid on his tongue. We built our empire on exploitation disguised as order. The humans showed us a mirror, and the reflection was ugly. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. The Vornathi released their hold on occupied mining worlds. The Selenite Collective opened their advanced medical technology to species they'd previously excluded. The Fantine Confederacy established scholarship programs for emerging civilizations. But not all changes were voluntary. Ambassador Krell reviewed reports in his quarters aboard the Vornathi flagship. 3 species had attempted to test humanity's resolve. The Mordrath hegemony sent a stealth fleet to raid a human observation post. The fleet vanished without trace. The Quelix Corporation tried to sabotage the Reformed Council Charter through bribery and intimidation. Their entire board of directors disappeared for 3 days, returning with no memory of where they'd been but absolute terror in their eyes. The Grenthian war host declared humanity's threats empty and mobilized for conquest of a minor species' homeworld. Their star went nova. Krell had investigated personally. The Grenthian star was artificially triggered, carefully controlled to destroy only military infrastructure while evacuating civilian populations to safety. Humanity had destroyed a species' capacity for war while sparing its people. It was precise, terrifying, and merciful all at once. The message was clear. Humanity's threats were not empty, but neither were they cruel. Ambassador! His aide entered the quarters. There's someone here to see you. She says her name is Sarah Chin. Krell's crystalline form brightened with surprise. In the months since the council meeting, no one had seen or heard from Commander Chin. Send her in. Chun entered, looking exactly as she had before. Young, tired, determined. She carried a small device that she placed on Krell's desk. I'm here unofficially, she said. What I'm about to show you is classified even within the Terran Dominion. But you've been the most reasonable voice on the council, and I think you deserve to know the truth. She activated the device. A hologram appeared showing Earth, humanity's homeworld. But it looked different, strange. The continents were the same, but the cities, they phased in and out of visibility, existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. This is Earth as it exists now, Chin explained. We're slowly shifting our entire homeworld into higher dimensional space. In approximately 50 years, Earth will no longer exist in your observable universe. Krell stared at the impossible image. You're leaving reality itself? This reality, Chin corrected. There are others. Infinite variations, infinite possibilities. We've learned to navigate them. But before we go, we need to ensure this galaxy can survive without falling back into the old patterns. That's what the temporal locks are really about, aren't they? Krell asked. Not punishment, but ensuring we have time to change. Exactly. But there's a problem. Chen's expression darkened. Something is coming. Something we didn't account for. She changed the hologram. Now it showed deep space far beyond known systems. There, in the absolute darkness between galaxies, something moved. Ships, but not human ships. These were vast, organic-looking vessels that seemed to be grown rather than built. We call them the Harvesters, Chun said quietly. An ancient species that travels between galaxies, consuming civilizations. They're drawn to technological advancement like predators to blood and water. They arrive, strip a galaxy of all advanced life, and move on. They last came to this galaxy 60 million years ago. The Great Extinction, Krell breathed. Every species knew the legend, a time when advanced civilizations simply vanished, leaving only primitive life to evolve again. Not legend, history. Chun zoomed in on one of the harvester ships. They're coming back. Our dimensional technology made ripples they could sense. They'll arrive in approximately 15 years. The weight of this revelation crushed down on Krell. Can you stop them? We can hide from them, move fully into higher dimensions where they can't reach us. But the rest of the galaxy, Chun trailed off, would be defenseless. Yes, Krell's mind raced. Why tell me? Why not the full council? Because the council would panic. Species would flee, fight each other for resources, abandon reason. I'm telling you because I need your help preparing a defense without causing mass hysteria. Defense? Against beings that exterminated galactic civilization. Chun smiled grimly. We have 15 years. The ancient empires stagnated, but that can change. If every species dedicates itself to advancement, shares technology freely, works together, you might have a chance. Might. We'll help, Chen assured him. We can't fight your battles for you. We'll be dealing with the harvesters in our own way, in spaces they can access, but we can accelerate your development. Give you tools you'd take millennia to discover on your own. Why? Krell asked. You could just save yourselves and leave us to our fate. Chun stood, looking out at the stars through the viewport. Because that's what the old galaxy would have done. We're trying to build something better. A galaxy where species help each other, not exploit each other. But that galaxy needs to survive to exist. She turned back to Krell. I'm offering you a choice. Work with me in secret to prepare the galaxy for what's coming, or watch civilization collapse when the harvesters arrive. Either way, humanity's time as your guardians is ending. What happens next is up to you. Krell looked at the hologram of the approaching harvester ships. 15 years. It seemed like forever and no time at all. What do you need from me? Chen smiled. Initiative. The Crothan Empire has the largest military infrastructure. Vorgrim is old and traditional, but his generals are forward-thinking. The Vornathi have advanced material science. The Selenites have biological engineering. The Luminates understand energy states. If we combine these strengths, actually share and integrate instead of hoarding, we might survive. You might survive, Chen corrected. Humanity is already beyond their reach. But this galaxy, the one we grew up in despite its flaws, deserves a chance to continue. Krell made his decision. I'll help. But Chun, what are the harvesters to humanity now? If you're as advanced as you seem, surely they're no threat. Chen's expression became haunted. In normal space, we're gods. In higher dimensions, we're powerful. But the harvesters, they've been doing this for billions of years. They've evolved to hunt species like us. They're the reason advanced civilizations are rare. They're the galaxy's immune system, destroying anything that grows too powerful. Then why haven't they stopped you already? 10 years passed. The galaxy transformed beyond recognition. On the Crothan Military Academy world of Varthis, young warriors from 15 different species trained together, sharing tactical knowledge freely. General Thax, now Supreme Commander of the newly formed Galactic Defense Coalition, watched them practice combined arms warfare, Vornathi energy shields protecting Selenite biocommandos, while Fantine scout flyers provided reconnaissance. They're good, observed Admiral Chun. Yes, Sarah Chun had been promoted, as she stood beside him. Better than we expected. They're motivated, Thax replied. Fear is a powerful teacher. The knowledge of the harvesters had been carefully released over the past decade. Not as sudden revelation, but as discovered evidence. Ancient warnings found in archaeological sites. Pattern analysis of cosmic phenomena. By the time the full truth emerged, the galaxy had already begun preparing. The changes were staggering. The Vornathi had shared their quantum crystalline technology, allowing instant communication across the galaxy. The Selenites revealed bioengineering secrets that extended lifespans and enhanced cognitive abilities for all species. The Crothan Empire converted its military shipyards into construction facilities for a new generation of unified defense vessels. And humanity provided the foundation: physics that bent reality, energy manipulation that drew power from the quantum vacuum, defensive systems that could phase ships between dimensions. Not enough to make the galaxy equal to humans, but enough to give them a fighting chance. 5 years left, Chen said, watching the warriors drill. The harvesters will arrive precisely on schedule. They always do. Will it be enough? Thax asked. Chen didn't answer immediately. The simulations give you a 37% chance of survival if they commit their full force. Higher if they underestimate you. But Thax, they never underestimate. They've been doing this for eons. And humanity? What's your survival probability? Classified, Chun said with a slight smile. But let's say we're not confident enough to stop preparing. On the Luminate homeworld, a star system where the Luminates existed as patterns of conscious energy, High Scholar Nexus communed with his fellow ascended beings. They floated in the chromosphere of their sun, debating the great question. The humans offer us a weapon, Nexus explained. a way to weaponize our energy state existence. We could become soldiers in this war. We have been peaceful for 50,000 years, argued Elder Prism. We transcended physical conflict. To return to violence is to survive, Nexus interrupted. The harvesters don't negotiate. They don't spare the peaceful. They harvest all advanced consciousness. We have a choice. Fight or cease to exist. Because we're hiding, moving slowly, carefully, not drawing attention. But they'll find us eventually. When they do, she shook her head. Let's just say humanity finally found something we can't simply transcend. We'll have to actually fight. She headed for the door, then paused. Ambassador, one more thing. The temporal locks on the stars? We're removing them early. They were meant to last a year, but the galaxy needs to trust each other now, not operate under threat. Consider it a gesture of good faith. After she left, Krell stood alone, watching the hologram of the approaching armada. Somewhere in deep space, an ancient evil was coming. And the galaxy, so recently unified by fear of humanity, now faced something that made human power seem insignificant. The year of shadows was ending. The countdown to extinction had begun. The debate raged for days at the speed of thought. Finally, the consensus emerged. The Luminates would fight, but on their own terms. They would become the galaxy's rapid response force, able to travel at light speed and strike anywhere instantly. Across the galaxy, similar transformations occurred. Species that had hoarded secrets for millennia suddenly shared them. Ancient feuds were set aside. Research that had been classified for security reasons became public knowledge. Ambassador Krell stood in the new Galactic Defense Headquarters, a massive station positioned at the geometric center of all settled systems. Around him, holographic displays showed the fruits of 10 years' labor. 12,000 heavy battleships equipped with human-derived phase shields. 400,000 support vessels with quantum-entangled coordination systems. Planetary defense grids on every settled world, capable of projecting reality-anchoring fields. 6 million trained soldiers from 40 species, all capable of fighting in coordination. And humanity's secret contribution, hidden dimensional artillery platforms scattered throughout the galaxy, capable of firing from higher dimensional spaces into normal reality. It's magnificent, Krell said to Chen, who'd come to inspect the preparations. 10 years ago, this cooperation would have been impossible. 10 years ago, you were competing for dominance, Chen observed. Nothing unites like a common enemy. Will you fight beside us? Krell asked. When they arrive? Chen's expression became unreadable. We'll be fighting our own battle. The harvesters you'll face are their harvesting vessels. Dangerous but manageable. The real threat is their mother hives, the queen ships that coordinate everything. Those exist in higher dimensional space, where they're truly deadly. How many mother hives? 7. Each one is planet-sized and contains trillions of harvester drones. They can process entire civilizations into raw energy and biomass. Humanity will engage the queen ships while you handle the harvesters in normal space. Krell felt his crystalline form dim with worry. 7 planet-sized enemies. Can you win? Unknown, Chen admitted. We've never fought anything on this scale. But that's always been humanity's strength. We adapt. If we fail, you'll know because the harvester fleet will suddenly gain coordinated intelligence. If that happens, we're doomed. Probably. But Krell, I want you to know, working with you, with the Council, seeing the galaxy come together like this, it reminds us why we fought so hard to survive. You're worth saving. The years crawled forward. Training intensified. Technology advanced. The galaxy held its breath. 4 years after Chen's visit, the first detection came. Long-range quantum sensors picked up spatial distortions at the galaxy's edge. The harvesters were entering normal space, right on schedule. All species, battle stations, came the order across the quantum network. This is not a drill. The enemy has arrived. In the Galactic Defense Headquarters, Supreme Commander Thax stood before the largest holographic display ever constructed. It showed the entire galaxy, with friendly forces marked in blue and the incoming threat in red. The red was overwhelming. Enemy count? Thax asked, his voice steady despite the fear coiling in his gut. Still calculating, the sensor officer replied. Preliminary estimate. 400,000 harvester ships, battlecruiser class or larger. Murmurs of despair rippled through the command center. They'd prepared for maybe 100,000. Then Chancellor Vorgrim's voice came through from the Crothan flagship. We have trained for this. We have prepared for this. Our ancestors fell to these creatures because they were divided. We are united. All ships, assume formation Omega-7. Let us show these ancient parasites that this galaxy has teeth now. Krell, standing beside Thax, activated his communicator. Commander Chun, they're here. Where are you? Static. Then Chen's voice, distorted by dimensional interference. We're engaging the Queen ships now. Good luck, Ambassador. Make us proud. The communication cut off. The galaxy was on its own. The Harvester fleet advanced in a formation that had destroyed 1,000 galaxies. They moved with terrible purpose, their organic ships pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't so deadly. The first engagement occurred near the Quellan cluster. A Harvester vanguard of 3,000 ships encountered a Galactic Defense Coalition force of 5,000. The battle lasted 7 hours. When it ended, the Harvester vanguard was destroyed. But the Coalition had lost 60% of its ships. They're tougher than the simulations predicted, Admiral Lorix reported from his command ship. Their adaptive armor learns from each attack. By the end, our weapons were only half as effective as they started. Then we don't give them time to adapt, Thax decided. All forces, execute Operation Cascade. Hit them everywhere at once. Overwhelm their processing capacity. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Defense Coalition struck. Instead of concentrated forces, they deployed smaller, faster groups that attacked from multiple vectors simultaneously. The Harvesters evolved to fight conventional warfare, struggled with the chaotic, decentralized tactics. It's working, Krell exclaimed as reports flooded in. They're designed to fight big battles, not guerrilla warfare. Don't celebrate yet, Thax warned. They're adapting. Watch. He was right. Within days, the Harvesters began deploying smaller hunter-killer groups of their own, mirroring coalition tactics. The war evolved at breakneck speed, new strategies met with counter-strategies, innovations answered with adaptations. Weeks turned into months. The galaxy burned with warfare on a scale never before witnessed. Entire systems became battlegrounds. The Selenites developed biological weapons that targeted Harvester organic components. The Vornathi created quantum mines that could disable ships mid-flight. The Crothan military, drawing on 10,000 years of tactical knowledge, orchestrated campaigns of brilliant ferocity. And slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. We're winning, Krell said one day, staring at the strategic display. The red was receding, not quickly but measurably. At tremendous cost, Thax reminded him. We've lost 4,000 systems, 12 billion dead. The economic damage will take centuries to repair. But we're surviving, Krell insisted. That's what matters. Then, in the war's 5th month, everything changed. The Harvesters stopped adapting. They stopped coordinating. Their attacks became random, almost panicked. What's happening? Thax demanded. The answer came from the deep dark between dimensions. A single transmission, heavily encrypted and compressed. Mother hives destroyed. Humanity victorious. Remaining Harvesters will flee or die. Finish them. It was Chen's voice, but exhausted beyond measure. They did it, Krell breathed. The humans actually destroyed the Queen ships. Across the galaxy, the Harvester fleet began to collapse. Without the Mother hive's coordination, the individual ships were powerful but directionless. Coalition forces pressed the advantage, hunting down the remaining threats with methodical precision. The war lasted another 3 months of cleanup operations. When the last Harvester ship was destroyed, the galaxy finally exhaled. 1 year after the last Harvester fell, the Galactic Council reconvened. But this was not the same council that had cowered before humanity's power. This council had been forged in the fires of survival, tempered by shared sacrifice. The chamber had been rebuilt after a harvester strike had destroyed the original. Now it floated not between 3 stars but at the heart of the newly designated Unity Nebula, a region of space where ships from all species could gather safely. Ambassador Krell stood at the podium, older now, his crystalline form showing stress fractures that would never fully heal. Around him sat representatives of every surviving species, and conspicuously, an empty seat marked with a simple placard, "Humanity, Observer Status." "We are here to honor the fallen," Krell began. 58 billion souls gave their lives so that our civilizations could continue. "We name the war of unity, for it was our unity that saved us." Chancellor Vorgrim, now ancient and weary, rose from his seat. "The Crothan Empire acknowledges that without the warnings provided by Commander Chun, without the technology shared by humanity, without the restructuring they forced upon us, we would be extinct. I propose that humanity be granted permanent council status with full voting rights." The motion passed unanimously. "Now the question," Thera said, her 6 eyes focusing on the empty chair, "is whether humanity will accept. We've had no contact with them since the war's end. Are they even still watching us?" As if in answer, space shimmered in the center of the chamber. Not a portal, not a ship. Reality simply folded, and Sarah Chan stepped through. But she was not alone. Behind her came others. Thousands of humans, their forms shimmering between states of matter, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions. They were beautiful and terrible, beings that had transcended physical limitation while retaining their essential humanity. Chun looked older too, though age seemed to touch her differently now. She'd fought in battles beyond the understanding of those assembled, had seen 7 planet-sized horrors die by humanity's hand. The experience showed in her eyes. "We accept your offer," she said simply, "but with conditions." "Name them," Vorgrim said. "First, humanity maintains its autonomy. We'll participate in council discussions, but we won't be bound by decisions that conflict with our evolution. Second, we want an end to the notion of observer species and lesser members. Every species gets a voice, regardless of age or power. Third, we're establishing a new organization, the Transcendence Initiative." Krell leaned forward. "What's that?" "A joint program where species that wish to can learn the basics of higher dimensional existence. We won't force it on anyone, but we'll offer the path. It'll take generations, maybe millennia, but eventually, all of you could join us in the spaces beyond." "Why would you share that?" Nexus asked, his energy form pulsing with curiosity. "Your advancement gave you power over us." Chun smiled sadly. "Because we finally understand what we were meant to be. Not conquerors, not rulers, guides. The galaxy needed someone to show it was possible to transcend the old ways. We did that. Now it's time to show that transcendence isn't a solo journey." She gestured, and holographic displays appeared showing human colonies throughout the galaxy. Not hidden, not powerful, just peaceful settlements where humans lived alongside other species. "These are our people who chose to remain in normal space. They'll be your neighbors, your friends, your partners in rebuilding. And when you're ready, when any species is ready, we'll teach you how to reach beyond physical limitation." "And what will you do?" Krell asked. "Where will humanity go now?" Chun turned to gaze at the stars beyond the chamber walls. "We're going to explore. The multiverse is infinite, Ambassador. Infinite realities, infinite possibilities. We want to see what's out there, but we'll always maintain connections here. This is where we were born, where we learned to survive, where we became what we are." "The harvesters," Thax said suddenly. "Will they return?" "Not for at least 1,000,000 years, Chun assured him. "That's their cycle. They'll find some other galaxy to plague. And by then, the rest of you will be ready. We're leaving behind complete records of the war, of our tactics, of their weaknesses. Future generations won't be caught unprepared." She walked to the empty chair marked with humanity's name and placed her hand on it. "This seat won't always be filled. Sometimes years will pass without a human representative sitting here. But know that we're watching, always. If another threat emerges, if the galaxy falls back into the old ways of exploitation and dominance, we'll return. Is that a threat? Asked a minor ambassador nervously. It's a promise, Chun corrected. We're invested in your success now. You're our origin story, our reminder of where we came from. We want you to thrive, to grow, to eventually join us in the greater cosmos. Vorgrim stood, his massive reptilian form somehow dignified despite its age and scars. Commander Chun, the Crothan Empire has one request. Our histories will record this era, this transformation. We want to record it accurately. Tell us, what should we call this age? Chun considered. In human history, we had dark ages and Renaissance periods, industrial ages and information ages. What you're entering now is something new. An age where cooperation isn't enforced by threat but chosen because it's right. Where species help each other not from obligation but from genuine care. Where the goal isn't dominance but collective advancement. She smiled. Call it the Age of Ascension. Not just humanity's ascension, but the galaxy's. You're all climbing now together. Some will reach higher dimensions. Others will perfect physical existence. Some will find entirely new paths we haven't imagined. But you'll do it together. The council erupted in discussion, debate, excitement. For the first time in galactic history, the future felt not predetermined but full of infinite possibility. Krell approached Chun as the session dissolved into smaller conversations. I have to ask, when you first revealed yourselves, you were angry. You wanted us to feel powerless as you had felt. Do you still feel that way? Chun shook her head. No. The war changed everything. We fought side by side with species we'd resented. We saw Crothan soldiers die protecting human colonies. We watched Vornathi engineers work themselves to exhaustion building shields for Selenite worlds. Anger can't survive that kind of unity. What do you feel now? Hope, Chin said simply. For the first time in human history, we're not fighting to survive. We're not scrambling to keep up with older species. We're not afraid. We can finally focus on becoming the best version of ourselves. And we can help you do the same. She began to fade, quantum tunneling preparing to return her to higher dimensions. Ambassador, one last thing. Thank you. For what? For being reasonable when it mattered most. For trusting us when you had every reason not to. For choosing to grow instead of stagnate. You made this possible. Then she was gone, along with the other transdimensional humans. The chamber felt emptier but also somehow fuller, charged with possibility. Krell looked at the seat marked for humanity. It would sit empty more often than not, he knew. But its presence would remind everyone of what was possible when a species refused to accept its limitations. High Scholar Nexus floated beside him. The galaxy will never be the same. No, Krell agreed. It'll be better. We were stagnant for so long, thinking we'd reached the pinnacle of civilization. Humanity showed us we'd barely begun climbing. Do you think we'll actually achieve ascension? Will species like mine and yours truly transcend? Krell's crystalline form pulsed with newfound determination. I don't know, but for the first time in my life, I'm excited to find out. Humanity gave us something more valuable than technology or protection. What's that? They gave us a future worth striving for. Across the galaxy, the work of rebuilding continued. But it wasn't just reconstruction, it was reimagining. Every species approached their recovery with new eyes, asking not, how do we return to what we were? But, what can we become? The Crothan Empire, once built on military dominance, began investing in scientific research and cultural exchange. The Vornathi, formerly focused on resource extraction, pioneered ecological restoration techniques. The Selenites, who'd hoarded their bioengineering secrets, established universities on 100 worlds to share their knowledge. And slowly, carefully, the first non-human students enrolled in the Transcendence Initiative. It would take generations to see results. Learning to perceive higher dimensions required rewiring neural patterns that had evolved for millions of years. But the volunteers persisted, driven by humanity's example. In the deep dark between dimensions, Sarah Chun and her fellow humans explored realities beyond imagination. They encountered wonders and horrors, made contact with entities older than the universe, discovered laws of physics that made conventional science look like children's puzzles. But they never forgot where they came from. Human observers remained in normal space, watching, recording, occasionally guiding when asked. They'd learned the hard way that power without wisdom led to tyranny. They'd been victims of that tyranny and briefly wielders of it. Now they were something better, mentors. On Earth, now existing in 17 different dimensional states simultaneously, a monument was erected. It showed two figures, a human reaching down and an alien reaching up, their hands clasped in unity. The inscription read, "We were small among giants. We were dismissed, exploited, underestimated. We could have become conquerors. Instead, we became guides. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not our power, but our choice to use that power to lift others." 10 years after the war, Krell received a message through the quantum network. It was simple text, no video. "Ambassador, this is Chun. I wanted you to know we found something. Evidence of other harvesters in other galaxies. Thousands of them, part of a cosmic cycle billions of years old. We're going to stop them. All of them. It'll take millennia, but we're going to break the cycle so that no civilization ever faces extinction from harvesting again. We're doing this because of you, because you showed us that civilizations are worth saving. Thank you for reminding us to be human." Krell read the message 3 times, then archived it in the Council's permanent records. Future generations needed to understand the truth about humanity's departure. They didn't leave because the galaxy was saved. They left because they'd found a bigger mission, saving every galaxy. As Krell stood in the Unity Nebula, watching ships from 100 species pass by in peaceful commerce, he marveled at the transformation. A decade ago, they'd been competing empires on the verge of stagnation. Now they were a unified civilization reaching for transcendence. All because one species refused to stay down. All because humanity chose to be exceptional not through conquest, but through compassion. The age of ascension had truly begun, and humanity, once the weakest members of the Galactic Council, had become the galaxy's greatest heroes, not by destroying their enemies, but by elevating their friends. In the vast cosmic drama, humanity had found their purpose. They were not meant to rule the galaxy. They were meant to show it what was possible. And across infinite dimensions, in realities beyond comprehension, humanity continued their eternal work, finding those who were lost, protecting those who were weak, and teaching those who were willing that the universe had no limits except those we accepted. The galaxy had underestimated them once. It would never make that mistake again. Neither would the universe.